85617-282-06.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
All right, welcome back to the final hour at the Roundtable with MAMLEO. I'm Larry Ellison, your host, in with studio with my brother from another. My co-host, Dr. Bradley, is in the house.
Yes, brother. I think I'm on the air. I'm not sure why you're not. Okay?
Check 1 2.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. All right.
Got me wall to wall treetop tops.
Doing a mush mouth over there. And the studio guest hosted with today, Rhodes Pierre is in studio all the way from the other side of town. Thank that, brother. We want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Coral Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. Also, a reminder, the clergy out there and the general public, MAMLEO will be hosting a Faith and Blue reception at the Harvard Club of Boston at 374 Huntington Avenue, Boston, Mass. 02215 from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Dinner will be served. It's free for all attendees. Again, that's a MAMLEO with Faith and Blue reception at the Harvard Club of Boston, 374 Huntington Ave, October 5th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Again, it is a free event. Yes. Dinner will be served. So if you have anyone in the clergy, I just sent it to Dr. Bradley. I know he's involved in the church there. Come on down. And like I said, it's in collaboration with the NAACP as well with this event. So like I said, always... we don't usually have a problem with free. We were talking about earlier, right? free is the optimal word.
For me.
Yeah. When it's free, give me two.
Buy one, get one free. Yeah. So, again, Patrick, thank you for holding on the line there. Before we went to break there, we were talking about the collaboration, and appreciate you sharing our broadcast. That means a lot because we try to get it out there as many people as possible, but you're right. There's a disconnect. I think particularly a lot of times, particularly being a black police officer, I know it has changed from when I came on because there was such a divide. I didn't probably feel the same pressure of having to decide one or the other because I wasn't accepted even in the profession that I was in. Mm-hmm. So I was able to stay in my lane. But a lot of the officers now, because they don't see it in the same manner. It's out there, but I guess they don't identify, racism and privilege in the way that it was very blatant. You could walk into areas that were not available to the public and see some comments in the locker rooms and in the station that you knew it had to be one of your own colleagues who had put that there. That's frowned on today, but it's just masked and packaged in a different way.
It may not be as blatant,
but it's an assignment.
It's very surreptitious in the way that they do it. But I want to go back to my comment though, because I think it's key. So the citizens, and this is all over the country, saying policing is an integral part of our civility in the society. So we must have a police department that we trust. And we must have a police department that is actually educated beyond the academy. The academy is important, but it's got to be beyond that. And so I think I really appreciate the work that the Post is doing, not just because we are close. I just think that the idea is right to have that certification. But I think what's happening here is that by releasing that information, what you're saying to the citizens, that here's the transparency that you need. All right, so now let's start building the trust. Right. In our police departments throughout the Commonwealth that we need in order to engage into this collaboration around dealing with crime and dealing with situations that would be disruptive to the quality of life that we all want to enjoy. So I think that's important.
It's an imperative as well.
So I think the other side of it though is that internally to policing, when you're looking at this disciplinary sheet, and you see one individual that has 18 gigs, 18 problems, that person should not be, your supervisor, or should not be. There should be a policy in place, and that's where I think the Post can push. How do we actually make sure that these internal police departments are not, excusing behavior that is that should be.
So this is where the struggle for the Post, because we can't we can't go back in the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
So it's going to take time for us to capture that, because prior to the Pulse being introduced, there was no statewide agency. You had civil service where you could appeal something that was done to you and you only, right? You couldn't go to civil service for a disparate treatment to someone else. Now, where the reporting within 48 hours of an allegation against a law enforcement officer must be reported to the Pulse for evaluation. So it's going to take time for us to catch up. So it puts folks on notice as well, where a lot of times these things weren't even dealt with. You didn't even know they were existing. Now there was a database, and there was also oversight that was never there, and that was by design. That will take time to get in there. So folks may have gotten away with things, but I think going forward, you're going to see a lot more scrutiny of behavior from the Pulse. And the good thing with MAMLEO is that with the advocacy that we did, we were able to get it in the law. So MAMLEO has a permanent seat on the Pulse.
Okay. Now my other hit is that it becomes important that the Post, however you guys do it, and it may have to go back to the legislature to get this done, but that the infraction that happens in the police department, and the chief has decided to terminate, that the chief is not using that as a negotiation point where he say, well, if you leave, then I won't report this, so you can go someplace else and get a job. But if you refuse to leave, I'm going to report. Well, it must be mandated that he has to report.
It is set up like that now. Okay. So he must report. If there is a report that comes in, the chief must send that to Post within 48 hours.
Okay.
There is no, if you feel like it, whatever. And a lot of times they send us in abundance because they don't want to be caught on the wrong side, because the public can also send that to us as well. So if we get something from the public and they said they reported it to their department and we don't have this, there's no connection between the two, somebody's got some answering to do.
Yeah, because the power you guys got is certification.
Yes.
You can decertify. You can certify and decertify. So they're going to listen to you. But my point here is that I have heard situations and review situations that where chief will use that as a bargaining tool for the union to say, hey, listen, if you don't actually, and this is in other jurisdictions, not in Massachusetts, if this individual leaves voluntarily, we won't report this to the Post so he can actually get hired someplace else. And that circumvents the whole system.
So Patrick, want to bring you back in, and Patrick Wilson, and what organization are you with again, sir?
ActivateMedia.org.
Okay. And if you explain to our audience what exactly that entails and what that is?
Well, what it is, it's formerly Occupy Boston Radio. That's the connection there.
Okay.
So about 2012, 2013, Occupy was over, and that was done. So other movements had come along. You had Black Lives Matter. You had the women's Me Too movement that had come along. So the decision was made to change the name to Activate Media, Activate, referring to activists, and to move forward with that, to be able to include more groups and more marginalized groups that had struggles that have gone on much longer than Occupy had. And we've been, it's almost 12 years now.
Wow. It's almost as long as we've been here.
Oh, you guys have been 20 years now, right? 20 years, 20 some years?
We're pushing close to that. Yeah, we're pushing close to that. Yeah, it's been a while.
Fast.
It really does. So I want to get your take on what Dr. Bradley was saying, and do you see a change in the movement? I mean, yes, granted, there's more accountability, but it's not. I think people thought the Post was going to be a cure-all, and I can tell you, I'm seeing more oversight than I have ever seen, and because I get a bird's eye view of these cases when we go into executive session, and I can't discuss the matters that we discuss, but what I can say is that I firmly believe these would not have gotten the attention that they get. Some of these decertifications would not have taken place from the Pulse, because most times these will go to civil service and no one would even know that these were taking place around the Commonwealth, because there was no hub that all this was being put into. Even Boston has an OPAT, Office of Police Accountability and Transparency. I still don't know exactly what they're doing, if anything at all. And that's not to disparage them. It's just I don't see anything really being reported out on them. The Post has been very transparent, and I'm not saying that because I'm one of the commissioners, but I see a lot more information being fed to the public And I see also a lot of police officers are glad to see something independent, because there have been issues in which we have disagreed with the department's view on an employee, because we look at all the facts, and they've been able to keep their certifications, and the departments have not been happy about that, because like I said, we're not there to rubber stamp their behavior, because we also know they're not always, like as you alluded to, Dr. Bradley, sometimes there's a hidden agenda, and you want us to be the one to carry it out for you. So just want to get your take on it.
Well, I think that first and foremost, there are good old boys everywhere. And I think that is in the police departments across our nation, as well as every other profession and every other community that exists. They're there. And that's due to historic privilege. Now, I think that the certification is probably one of the most important things that we've gotten with regard to this, because it does offer oversight of some kind. Now, it's interesting. I didn't realize that there was a 48-hour reporting period that it had to be reported to the Post. That offers a little bit more of a check and balance, because somebody at least knows about it. Now, is that going to be 100%? No, it's not, because of the good old boys that we're referring to, and that's going to exist in one form or another. It's prevalent throughout police. My understanding is that it's prevalent throughout police departments as well as the military, in that people have supervisors and people who have been with the department for 20, 30 years and have risen up through the ranks and have taken advantage of their privilege to do so. And this is the way that they've learned things along, learning the ropes of how to survive within whatever police department it is, or how they've been able to move forward in their life privately. The example I'll give is another police department. There was a big list of them that came through, and there were some of them that stood out quite a bit. One of them were in another department. There were a couple of police officers that were sued, and the plaintiffs were awarded, I think it was like $1.8 million or something like that. There's been no checks and balances as far as responsibility for that. They basically just thumbed their nose at that. I think you've probably seen those.
Yeah, and to the
that
point,
just illustrates that in the past, things may have been loose, but this at least gives us an inch.
Right, and to that point, the only, like I said, consequence a lot of times, even for folks who were doing wrongdoing because they were protected and they were found to be wrong, is that the taxpayer usually was the one that bear the burden of the financial hit, right? And so it's not the city, it's the taxpayers that foot the bill for that. But I also find that, and where I would disagree slightly with your analysis about, the good old boy, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, is because before, when there were no consequences if you were to cover up something, because you reported to no one, and it was always stonewalling, and you'd have to go through all of this red tape to even try to get the information, right? Where the Post, where it's written in the law, any of the commissioners with adequate reason I can subpoena records, and I can get things where before, I could never get from our internal affairs, right? That I can't just walk in there with no reason for it. But if it's a legitimate reason, I can request those, and they cannot deny them. It's in the law. They'd be advised. So folks are less likely to put themselves on line for someone as they used to, because there are consequences if we find out that they were obstructing the investigation before, where there were no consequences. So, like I said, we're seeing a lot more being reported because folks don't want to get caught saying, well, who else knows that this happened and I didn't report it in a timely manner.
Let me ask this question. Sure. I'm just sitting here thinking, does the Post certify police chiefs?
Yes, anyone that has police powers, and that's a great question you asked, because we had to go in there and rewrite, because Boston is the only agency that has a civilian as their chief. Everyone else around the Commonwealth that has a police chief is a police officer, has police powers. So the way it was structured initially, it didn't say police commissioner. That was because they thought the legislators thought everyone was a chief, and that would apply. Because the police commissioner in Boston could have ignored everything and been exempt and said, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not a chief. I'm a civilian. So
that's my question.
Yes.
Because if you have a situation, and usually in larger municipalities, Boston, Springfield, Worcester, Brockton, you can have a commissioner, not a chief. And if the commissioner is exempt, then what incentive does he or she have to actually adhere to the terms and conditions of
and
the
that's
post?
why the language
so they changed that language.
Yeah, I flagged that because I saw it. I said, oh, this is a little out for Boston and anyone else who might have a commissioner that they're not accountable, and it is commissioner or chief. Exactly. And we had to modify some other things. For instance, for attestations, that we knew it was not like the original law was written that the police commissioner had to personally attest to your that you were credible and that they vouch for your character. We knew in large departments like the state police, and how realistic was it you're going to get the commissioner to have an interview with everyone? So or their nominee, and it was it wasn't going to be it had to be a supervisor. So and it's better because that person deals with you more than the commissioner does. The commissioner just probably knows you if by name, by ID number. So
you can be terminated in one department but not lose your certification, so you can be hired in another. How does that
so
work?
Even if there's a national database, so if you're decertified in another state, and we've had problems, people who that has come up where they have come prior to us having a certification here, that wasn't a hindrance from them, and then that has come up, and those people have been decertified here because their certification was decertified in other states.
Whoa. So let me process this now. So you're working in Massachusetts,
correct,
for 10 years.
Yes.
And then now Massachusetts comes online with Post.
Yes.
And as is online with Post, it finds out that you were decertified 20 years ago in another jurisdiction.
You lose your certification.
You lose your certification here.
Yeah, and people have.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
And now you're out of a job.
Retroactively.
Yeah, because we can't certify you here if you've not been certified. Because we didn't have it here. Exactly.
I agree with you.
Right.
Because I'm looking at what are the possible go-arounds here. And it seemed like someone sat down and looked at this and said, we got to block this as well, because these are all possible circumventions of getting the way we want to go.
And you kind of and in some of these people have had an exemplary record, no issues here, but they agreed to it there to move on, and now they're here. So, Patrick, how can organizations such as MAMLEO work with organizations such as yours? Because we were talking about, earlier in the broadcast, I don't know how long you've been listening, about the real abysmal turnout and voter participation here in Boston in particular. And we're seeing the result of that.
I think one thing that comes to my mind is participation as an organization or group in the events that happen, during the course of the year that the other nonprofit organizations and socially based ones they table at and have an appearance at. Being there and just, I think the most important thing, we can have online campaigns, spend money on advertising, but really just talking to people face to face is the most important thing. I'd love to get my contact information to you, have an offline conversation on how I'm retiring in January. I'm going to have a little more time on my hand. I'd love to continue to be involved in this process, because it is really shameful. Like I said, I worked the polls on the last election, the primaries, a few weeks ago, and the precinct I was at is a pretty good turnout. And when I left at 4 o'clock, only 34 people had voted, and that included the absentee ballots that had come in. So probably half of those were people who came in person in that span of time. That's just not acceptable. I know, Roach, you wanted to weigh in.
I just wanted, to harp it on that point. And earlier, I remember what the point was I was trying to make about the educational system. That has to do how come we don't register the kids to vote in school and make that part of the lesson plan? What happens to teaching civics? I remember before I graduated.
What happens is what you're seeing right now by not having it
civics,
in the classroom.
exactly. Like the idea of why it's important to vote, how to register to vote, how to serve on a jury, how a trial works, how the 3 branches of government works. And, we don't have that anymore. And so the invested
just
interest
on a Saturday morning, we'd get up in Schoolhouse Rock. Right?
Yes,
Conjunction, what's your function? How a bill is.
happened?
Right.
Yeah, we don't have those things anymore. And again, that's engaging the youth.
Well, actually, you have them on YouTube.
Yes.
I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
No, that's true. That's true. Disney bought them, so that it's like you can watch it on Disney Plus as well. Yes. But again, those are the things I think that is core, is like as far as like creating engagement and getting people involved at a young age so they understand the process and therefore they're not like too unfamiliar with it or like overwhelmed by the idea
ignorant to it. Ignorant to it really is.
And the thing is, like I said, like you know how they have selective service as a young man, and if you're under 18, make sure before you're 18 you're registered to.
Well, they do have
that
when you register when you go to get your driver's license and all these. But it's they have the voter registration.
Okay.
But the problem is it doesn't really help if I get you registered and you don't carry it out. So that's the part where we can't. There's a disconnect.
Well, see, guys, I think you have to realize though that it's important for the haves to maintain their status through making sure that the have-nots do not educated well enough to understand the importance of voting.
Right.
Yes. So I think a lot of to answer your question, a lot of things that you're not seeing, that's all calculated. I mean, cause as you were speaking, I'm saying to myself, like when you watch the History Channel, you don't see history.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Because people don't want you to be educated because Donald Trump said it.
You see American pickers.
Exactly. But I love the uneducated.
Right.
It's easier for me to put connection.
Yeah.
So I have a question, like real quickly on the post. I'm gonna go back to the post where my sister just asked me a question. What happens to that person's pension? If you have a situation where the individual is decertified.
So it's in question now because just recently, in the last couple of days, the courts here have said that people's pension cannot be taken. There was a state trooper whose pension was removed because of a criminal behavior, and the courts just said that the pension has to be reinstated. So I'm sure that's going to be revalued. We don't have any say in the pension. That's through the state, so we don't get involved in that. What we say, even the termination, we're not terminating anyone at the post. We're just saying is that
he can't be a police officer.
They're certified. If you want to hire them as a meter maid and keep them as a meter maid, because that's basically what they're down to. They have no police powers. So that's what we can do is say that you're not fit to be certified to carry out your duties as a law enforcement agent. But now when it comes to termination, that's not where we get involved. Now it's up to the agency
to figure out what they're going to do.
Exactly.
Go to fire department and go someplace else, but you cannot.
The likelihood is that if I'm paying you to be a police officer and you can't perform those duties, and shame on you if you're not going to take some process to move that so you can hire someone that can carry out those duties. Then that's between.
Well, another thing too is that although you're not actually saying that you have to fire them, but it's just a functional equivalent of it, though, Larry. You know what I mean? You can't do the job, so I can't.
Because I guess then we would be acting as their employers, and that's where the separation, right? And that's where we're saying, look,
that's a thin line.
It's semantics, right? But it's it's a layer of of separation from what the post is saying that we're not your employer, but your behavior is what we're calling into question, and what they do as far as keeping you on board. We don't want to get into that process of that's the way the law was written.
All right.
So Patrick, I want to take up more of your time. I just want if that's something that you'd be interested in, because if so, you can get my contact information from Pastor Hobbs offline. He'll hold you on there. Unless any parting comments you want, and we're going to grab this other call, but anything you want to say before we let you go?
Well, I want to thank you guys for allowing us to broadcast the show on Sunday mornings. It's on from 8 till 10, and I'm looking forward to listening to this show again later on tonight when I record it to go ahead and play.
All right, and don't hang up. Pastor Hobbs is going to give you my contact information, and you send me yours. I'd love to sit down with you and figure out how we can work together to improve relationships with law enforcement and the public, because there is a misconception that those of us in law enforcement, even ones that look like me, are somehow drinking that cool, and couldn't be any further from the truth. I'm a truth teller, and I have no problem.
I'm also willing to be a part of that conversation too.
All right,
because I think from the academia side, I can make a contribution to that as well. So
my brother, I love him. That's why I love him. He's always stepping up to look at my back. I appreciate it.
And Pat, since you'll be there, all right, I guess I'll join.
There we go. We got Rose. He even came up close to the mic to say that. Patrick, I want to thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Patrick Wilson from Activate Media has been a first caller to the show, and he, like I said, we appreciate you rebroadcasting our broadcast, because the more people hearing us, the better. And stay on the line. Pastor Hobbs is going to pass my information on to you, so you and I can connect. Appreciate you. Have enjoyed the rest of your morning.
Peace, love, and solidarity.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Be blessed.
Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Well, yeah, I actually wanted to talk to Patrick.
He's still on the line. Patrick, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. He said we have a caller that wants a question for you. Go ahead. Before we let you go, if you want.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for taking my call. So I was part of the Occupy Boston movement when you were set up down on Rose Kennedy. I guess what became Rose Kennedy. What did you say? About 12 years ago.
About 12 years ago. Yeah, on the 30th of September.
So, I guess my question is, what was the point? And what's
changed?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things that changed. I think that the conversation has opened up, in that there are more than one problem that affect all of us, and even though we have many different struggles, a lot of these struggles intersect with each other. And it gave us the ability, I mean a lot of different groups, ranging from the left to the right, to be able to band together and I guess to commiserate a little bit about our woes, but also to plan to do some things about it. Now, what's changed? The conversation's changed. The radio station still exists. A lot of the people have moved on to other organizations and are organizing currently in town right now. People have moved on to nonprofit organizations. Some of the folks, as you probably know, have even been elected to public office over in Cambridge and to the State House. So I think it's made a difference. Did it make a difference in any of the ways that we wanted it to directly at the time? Probably not, but it changed the conversation, and it paved the way for a lot of the tactics that we saw and still see used today as far as activism to be used. Some of them good, some of them maybe not so good. But, with that, we live and we learn.
Mm-hmm. You had a follow-up, Dan, or did that answer your question?
Is he there?
Did we lose him?
Uh-oh.
I guess we lost Dan. So, Patrick, do you think that would be an effective...
I'm right here.
Oh, okay.
You didn't lose me.
Oh, okay. Do you think that would be an effective tactic today in this climate?
Oh, no. No. I can answer for him. No. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, no, I don't. You mean setting up an occupation
right.
and do it? No, I don't think so at all. In fact, I have to say that I feel a little bit of I feel some responsibility in some ways for what's going on down at Mass.
I was going to say that's why I was going to. You read my mind. I'm like, was it Occupy there, and it's continuing to grow and.
Well, it's been on my mind the whole time, and the same problems exist with that that existed in 2011 as we're heading into October and the weather's getting a little cooler as you wake up in the mornings.
Yes.
You start to think about those people that are living outside. Now, I realize that some of them are out there out of choice. Some of them a lot of them are out there because of other problems they may have. But the situation still remains the same. Those people were already there. Now, Occupy, when the students showed up, when the activists showed up, everybody was welcome. The homeless in Boston, it gave them a place to kind of band together and feel a little bit safer. That, protecting the actual place is not a good thing moving forward as far as being able to get something done politically, I don't think. Too much effort is spent on, trying to keep the place there legally, as well as the day-to-day functions of cleanliness and feeding people and whatnot, which is the problem that they're running into down at Mass and Cass with it getting colder. So I think that, some of, maybe the community, the people down there, as well as part of the activist community that was involved at one point, maybe it takes a whole community to solve the problem down there. But I do feel some responsibility.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Occupy could clearly be said a model for what's happening down at Mass and Cass.
And why would you say that, Dan?
Because
what's the connection?
The pop-up city, the tents, the areas where people, as I said, I remember Occupy, and it was attempting to be a community full of positivity. I would say that I don't want to say it succeeded that way, but it certainly gave the model of just a lot of people showing up, setting up an area where people can live, set up tents, and there were streets and roads, and there was something that resembled a security force. But it's one of the things that you find is that it's difficult to have a kumbaya attitude and security at the same time.
Well, that was going to be my question. Do you think there was more of a tolerance for Occupy because there wasn't the connection with the drugs and the violence and the looting that is taking place in the communities? It was more organized in a way that wasn't threatening to the public that people see at Mass and Cass.
I think
to Patrick, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Dan, you can answer. What about to Patrick first?
I think that it's.
And let me just say this before while you're thinking about that, because like there was a communication even within the police department. They had a coordinator who met with you guys regularly, daily, about things. Billy Evans comes to mind as someone who was down there. So I'm saying is that there was more of there was a coherence in the leadership of who was doing it and organizing it than what's taking place down there now.
Let me tell you this, from the inside of that, it might have been a different situation than looking at it from the outside. I don't know where anybody here plugged into that at that time, but Billy Evans was down there every day. He's a hell of a nice guy.
Okay.
He got a lot of things done. But those elements were there. If you look back at the time when the camp was there towards the end, there were instances of heroin being sold in tents. I mean, the police busted somebody for that. There was a pregnant woman that was in one of the tents that was caught shooting up. So the basic elements that are the bad part of our society, or we look at as the bad part of our society, were already there. And I think that you take that on when you take on the homeless and give them a place to go. While you're giving them hope, which is, I think, what Occupy was doing or trying to do in espousing the idea that a better world is possible, you still have these underlying issues of mental health, drug abuse, poverty. We had, it's not only those elements, but there was also an issue of migrant people, migrant workers that were coming through camp this time of year. They travel north and south to work in the fields and in agricultural types of jobs. And I remember I never actually stayed in the camp. I had a bed at home, let's be honest. But with that, I remember there being, at the end of General Assemblies, a couple of them this time of year, there being full families, people that would come through, and they'd be looking for a tent because they just needed someplace to stay for the night because they were going to, keep on trying to make it south. And I remember there being no place for them, and having to try to figure something out or tell them someplace better to go. And it's heartbreaking to know that there's 3 kids there and 2 parents that you just can't do anything for. So I think we tried to take on everybody, but I think that those elements were there.
And so, because you raised a very good point again, if you got to go, please let me know. We're seeing now with this immigration issue in New York, Boston is now it's out in the front where there's an influx of folks. Do you think we're going to start to see that again? Because it seems to be filling up at the end. And this isn't a Jesus moment where somebody's trying to find. There is no more room because Boston has become so unaffordable, right? And even some of these surrounding cities and towns, they're running out of space. They're asking people, to rent out their homes. I don't know how well that's going to be received. I mean, there's a limit. Having strangers in your home violates all of what you've been raised to do, not do, I should say. Do you think we could see another type of encampment, but not just from people who are on drugs, but as you just alluded to, folks who are in transition here with nowhere to go, and we're coming into our worst time of the weather-wise for the season. But with the influx of folks here, there's not a whole lot of room left.
I think that part of that influx is that people are trying to get someplace before winter does hit, so they can get inside someplace, and that's what I would be thinking.
Right,
and that's why you see the big influx right now, I believe.
But I think, too, to that point, I'll let you finish. Historically, places that they would find warmer climates, right? Like you see a lot of folks in Florida because of the governors in there, in Texas and places like that, it's very threatening to them. Before, it didn't have that same vibe. Now it does. So folks are fleeing where it would be a little bit easier to be homeless in Florida and Texas than in Massachusetts or New York.
Okay. I think that depends on skin color to a certain degree.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I'd have a much different time being a homeless person in Florida than anybody else that lives around me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our communities are changing. The makeup of our communities are changing right now, and I think that part of that is because people still want the American dream, and I think Massachusetts is a very good place to live. So, not only do we have Ron DeSantis shipping people up here into New York City and Chicago and everything,
the governor from Texas as well,
right? But it's also a desirable place to live, and I can't begrudge them that. Do I think that there's anything that we're going to do to solve the issue in the short term? No, I think that we have to figure out a way to be more welcoming and to build capacity for these people. Putting people up in their homes, as you mentioned a minute ago, is going to be a big issue, because right now you have this big issue with Airbnb going on. New York City just a week ago, I believe, put into place a new law that takes most of the short-term rentals off the market. Now, in doing that, what that's going to do is it's going to make apartments, of course, much more expensive, but it's going to make it more difficult for a lot of folks transitioning out of homelessness. It's also going to make it more difficult for the state to figure out where to put these people. I mean, how many hotel rooms do we have?
Well, that's the thing is, in Boston is no different, because the price point of housing here, most of the people coming here, even with the subsidies or even what the state is offering, doesn't cover what people can get from market rent. So if I can get more in market rent, there's really nothing to attract me to renting it to a family that's transitioning from a monetary, not from a human rights or thing, but just from a financial.
Having spent some time in Florida over the summer, I learned very quickly that the Airbnb market is what all of most of the immigrants who have the money are investing. They're going into different communities and just buying up whatever property they can and turning it into an Airbnb, where they're making easily 4 times the amount of money per month because it's Florida and people need a place to stay for a week.
And it's still cheaper than a hotel.
It's considerably cheaper than a hotel, and you have total access. You're living in another home. So the people who are running these things are charging between $2,000 and $4,000 a week times 4. It doesn't make sense for them to have rental property. You can't get anywhere near that on a rental property.
Right, so let me understand it, Dan. Who are their customers? Is it the general public, or is it people coming from other places?
It's people coming from other places. Okay. It's people coming down for Disney World and different things.
So it's a tourist, not the immigrant.
Right.
Immigration. Okay.
Like I said, it's still cheaper than the hotel.
Right, but what happens is that takes the market right off. It just you can't find a home to buy. Because right now, I just saw a report in Massachusetts that the average home in Massachusetts is selling for, I think it was 2 or 3% over asking price.
No, we had our guests on last week from Mass Housing and our sponsor and folks from one of the realtors, and still talking about the average price in Boston has even with the rates being higher, it's still $700,000 plus for a single family home that may need some work. So
yeah, and not only can nobody afford that, the people who can afford it don't want anything to do with. I don't say it the right way. What I have noticed is that the people who can afford these homes are not homies. They're not. They bought their homes.
Yeah. They bought their home. They're investors. They purchased a home not to live as a primary residence, but to generate
exactly.
Exactly.
I'm thinking something entirely different. I'm thinking of he said immigrants. I'm saying are these illegal immigrants coming in buying homes, or these people who are migrated over successfully?
These are people that don't even come into the country, but they literally purchase it sight unseen just
like
to have.
Chinese are buying up a lot of property.
Okay, I got you.
In New York,
sight unseen, and they send their crew in. Their crew guts it. They know the regulations too fairly well. Get it so it qualifies for the Airbnb regulation and meets the state regulation, and they're off and running. This one person I know, he used to own 7-Elevens, and he said he sold them because he made more money buying homes and turning them into Airbnbs. The amount of money he could make in a year, he made 10 times that with Airbnbs.
Oh, that's smart.
But how does that address the issue?
It just makes it worse.
Yeah. It does, because again, it's now shifting into the temporary market.
Well, that's why I said I think you're going to start to see a lot more homeless, not just people who are on some type of drugs or anything, just because of pricing.
Pricing.
It's a real concern here. People are moving into other areas outside of the city, but that is also a domino effect, because even there it's starting to push the price point up. Yes. I see a lot of people driving in from Rhode Island, which used to be affordable to buy a home down there. Now those prices are creeping up in Rhode Island and in Providence. So, Patrick, thank you, sir. I don't want to time you. I'm going to put you on hold so Pastor Hobbs can get my contact information to you. Thank you for being gracious with your time this morning. I look forward to, as Dr. Bradley as well, sitting down with you and figuring out how we can move the needle at least a little bit. I was a little discouraged, and these guys are right with the faith, because your call in gave me a little faith. Okay, there may be something else that we can put in the toolbox to get folks plugged into exercising a right that a lot of people are still dying for. Just the basic.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. So I appreciate you, sir. All right. Stand by. Pastor Hobbs is going to give you my contact information if you don't mind, and please reach out.
Okay.
Dan,
yes.
Like I said, now that you're back, what's the direction we go from here? Because I'm a little
I think
encouraged.
Dr. Bradley has already said it, and I love you, but you seem to be somewhat resistant to the basic concept that the only solution is individuals changing their hearts, and the only person who knows how to change a heart is Jesus Christ for the positive.
Well, I'm never indifferent to the power of the Lord to change hearts. Mm-hmm. So that's if that's what I projected, then that's an erroneous interpretation of what I mean, because that's
you missed because you cut in. You missed what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say I agree
miss
with
what you're trying to say. Oh, I got you. Okay.
I got to say that I agree with you. That true change. True, any type of real tangible change is only going to come through a life of faith. Yeah. Now, if you don't want to say it's Christ, but you want to be a Muslim, that's not a problem for me, because you're going to, especially if you're going to be a Muslim that is going to live to the higher aspects of what being a Muslim entails. It's just, I knew people. Oh my goodness, the 5%ers who claimed to be Muslims and were selling drugs to the community back in the 90s. We're Muslims. We don't eat pork. We don't do this. We don't do that. And we understand the Quran and all this stuff, but we also make our money off of selling drugs. So that's not what I'm talking about.
That's the exception and not the rule.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. People who find the level of faith. You live a life with a level of faith, you're going to live a better life.
Yeah. No, I'm going to get my brother one of those cones.
I just want to address this.
Put on your dog.
I just really want to address this. The thing I'd like to address is this. Is first of all, Larry's not wearing that T-shirt that he says for the Harriet Tubman T-shirt. I could have freed the slaves if so that's the problem. You can contact the people, you can reach the people, but if they don't understand and if they're not aware and they don't really grasp the situation that they're in,
there is your mouth.
if they do not grasp the situation that they're in, like even if you make the contact, even if you speak to them, like she said, she couldn't save them. And it's like if they're that indoctrinated, that brainwash, where it's like even if you mention it, and that's the thing, they say knowledge is, what is it? 50%?
Knowledge is power.
No. Knowledge is 50% of it. Is because G.I. Joe used to say, knowing is half the battle. The other half is actually doing something about it. All right, so you can preach all day long, people can hear all day long, but unless they get up and actually take that message and do something with it, that's the issue. All right, and then people. To connect to them, to actually wake them up. I mean, they're like, oh, it's a woke movement, but a lot of people still aren't woke. They're not aware of their actual current situation and what's going on. So you have to, I guess, like address the elephant in the room and make. Well,
somebody pointed out to me that the woke movement is really just a copy of what was going on back in the days of Spike Lee. And in the days of trying to get black people to wake up to who they are, where they are, and how they are.
Listen, MAMLEO had that on a T-shirt. Remember we had Stay Woke? Even before it became up. That was, I still have the T-shirt.
It goes further back than that. Yes. It goes back to the Green Book.
I'm going to wear that
area.
Where black people had to be aware of where they are.
Yep.
Because you had these sundown towns. We're talking about traveling from the south to the north, and not knowing where to go to be served or sleep. In fact, I remember as a kid in Augusta, Georgia, back in the 1960s, when my aunt used to drive down from Boston to Augusta to visit us. And when they returned back to Boston, my mother used to fry chicken and fish and food and give to them so they have food to eat on the way back, because they could not stop in towns on the roadway because they would be hurt.
Yes.
So absolutely.
That's going back to Jim Crow, brother. It goes back to Jim
Crow. I again, we're on the same page. I'm saying this is exactly, but notice how it got co-opted. Notice how it got watered down and turned into something that is cute and funny, but being knowing where you were at all times was necessary if you were a minority moving through this country during a certain period of time.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I remember when I was back in '75, when I did my walkabout, people said, "Well, why don't you hitchhike across the country?" I said, "Look at me," and ask the question again with some common sense. It was bad enough buying a car and driving across the country by myself. I can just imagine if I'd tried to hitchhike. I don't think you'd see me by now. I think I'd just been a memory someplace.
Well, I mean, it goes to, when I started, school in middle school in busing in South Boston, you couldn't walk in those neighborhoods. Now, that's what I guess was troubling for me with young people who don't even go to school. I'm like, you couldn't even walk, there were, not saying, but they were real, but not borders, right? Even within this city, where if you you didn't go to Hyde Park if you were black, or you didn't go to Charlestown, East Boston, South Boston.
Well, my history in Boston starts in '78, and when I moved up here, I was told quite point blank where to go and where not to go.
Right, Carson Beach
South Boston. That's right. South Boston was the first place not to go if you were black.
Right.
Needless to say, I ignored it because that's me, but there were some issues, but we resolved all. We handled them, and that's what they were. But also going down to the docks, what's now the Seaport area. People forget the Seaport area used to be one of the most dangerous areas in Boston.
Yeah, probably still is, but for certain people.
But now, but now it's dangerous for a different reason now. But exactly. Now that used to be one of the most dangerous. The combat zone was a joke to most people who knew. That was, touted as being the area to go, but it was an absolute joke to people who actually knew where danger really was.
Right. So, gentlemen, we have a few minutes left. I want to give each of you a moment. Okay, re-energized. Like I said, Patrick has uplifted my spirit somewhat. And hold on, before Dr. Bradley falls asleep over there.
Get him some pudding.
Well, I'm
He's over
60.
there yawning like he ate an elephant.
One bite at a time. Well, I'm over 60. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna
See,
stick
he
with
keeps
that.
setting himself up walking into that one. But again, Dr. Bradley has willing to sign on with me, with Patrick, to see how we can maybe sit down and come up with some solutions. I think it's really appalling that T. Michael is still calling in here and not having gotten the support
8 years
from the
that
community,
I know of.
right? And it's been longer than that from the community, that he's got the land, and we're dealing with it at MAMLEO as well. But we have more of a team. We have resources, so we're able to fight it a little bit more, because it is a financial
But at
drain.
what point does it become T. Michael's issue? At what point? Because, as I said, I've only known of this for 8 years, and it's exactly the same thing he said 8 years ago, and nothing has changed. So my question is the issue the outside world, or is T. Michael being his own worst enemy?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because I'm not going to say I have all the details of that, but I can tell you, speaking from my perspective, when you're advocating for something that folks don't want to see change, you become the enemy. Because I wouldn't consider myself someone who's a troll. Dr. Bradley has sat in my seat, as well as our current president, Dr. Jeff Lopes, Eddie Crispin. All of us have felt the same wrath when we're pushing change.
At one point in time, Martin Luther King was considered a terrorist.
Right,
Okay,
right.
Malcolm X was considered a terrorist.
So change,
anyone that wants to make change will be considered a troublemaker.
right? No, and what
The
is
troublemaker's not the problem.
Our
Truthfully.
late congressman there, Lewis, said you need some necessary trouble.
Well,
Exactly.
I want to go back to a statement that Dr. King made in his in response to that question. Do you think agitating is the problem?
Try to get your clothes
And
clean without it.
Dr. King said, that whole washing machine that you have is one little piece that sits at the top is the agitator.
That's right.
You don't get your clothes clean without the agitator. You do not make change without agitation. You know what I mean? You're going to make someone, especially the person who's sitting in that status, enjoying the status quo, you're going to make those individuals uncomfortable because you're agitating, you're disturbing. And you saw that in Scripture. You saw this. Jesus did it to the Pharaohs.
Yes.
You know what I mean? To the Pharisees. You know what I mean? Agitation is necessary.
But one of the things you said numerous times on this broadcast, Dr. Bradley, when you said the agitator was when Barack Obama was elected president.
That's it.
That's
it.
That was the ultimate insult.
Yep.
And since
To
then,
white supremacy.
to follow him with Donald Trump,
Yep.
that's
exactly
That's it. And I go right back.
and downhill from there.
And my next statement is, we are consistently in the battle of full citizenship in America as black people. And you have a other side of that fight is a consistent maintaining of white supremacy along white
that
Americans.
you're 1/3.
So you got that fight going on, brother.
So one step forward, 2 steps back. Exactly. We had the Civil
This is
War.
like Carnival.
Then you had the whole thing of Jim Crow Reconstruction. You have a Barack Obama, and now you have this pushback. No matter what, every time we make progress, there is a pushback.
Yeah.
Dan,
Yes.
you get
Well, I think we have to. Each individual person has to seek some spiritual guidance, some understanding that whenever possible, you need to strive to do the most quality good. If you're doing the most quality good, whether it be based on God or being based on a cat on the roof, it doesn't matter. If you're doing the most quality good, then you're going to be a benefit to society. And I think that's the issue right now. Is right now people are too stressed out, they're too tired, they're too trying to make too much money just to survive, to look outside and see how they can do something else. 34 people voting is a shame.
You know what, brother? I tell you something. He just made a comment, and I just said to myself, I just wish sometime before my life is concluded that I can see where society is putting the same value of love on Jesus that they put on money.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's the problem.
All right. Well, Dan,
That would be phenomenal.
Dan Walker from Sounds Travels, heard every Wednesday from 8 to 9, including Mom's Corner. I do listen sometimes, have a chance to call in, but I do listen. I find it very uplifting spiritually. Thank you, sir, for participating at the round table with MAMLEO. I did also send you a text out for our Faith in Blue event. Would love to have you there. The MAMLEO will be hosting a Faith in Blue reception at the Harvard Club of Boston, 374 Huntington Ave, Boston, Mass. 02215 from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Thursday, October 5th, 2023. It is free. We're inviting all of our clergy to come and enjoy.
Do you need me for my sound? Let me know.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. I will pass that along to the folks who I am part of facilitating this, but I will definitely let them know.
Let me know.
That. But yeah, we'd love to have you. Like I said, and it's a free dinner, so like I said.
Yeah, but it's probably going to be chicken. I'm not a big chicken person.
No, fish. We have, we have a little variety there. So, we'll definitely save a spot for you. But like I said,
thank you.
It's a free meal, and we want to hear from some of the clergy. So let me know if you're coming. If you want to say a few words.
I definitely want to participate. Okay. And I'm offering my services. Let me know.
All right, I appreciate that. I will pass that along. Thank you for that, because I think we probably need that. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you so much. Dr. Bradley's already started his nap. Rhodes is over here. We said we're gonna get him a cone so he can project into the mic. Pastor Hobbs, thank you, sir. Appreciate you. I
got up early this morning, brother. Give me a break.
And I didn't.
You're younger.
Not by much. You've been listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. With you all out there. It's gonna be a wet day today, so stay in if you can and be dry. And Dr. Bradley,
be blessed.
All right.
Amen.